Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Leanne Tiernan. Leanne Tiernan, born on September 27, 1984, is the daughter of Michael Tiernan and Sharon Hawkhead from Bramley. Her parents divorced early, but Leanne maintains a good relationship with her father. She and her sister, Michelle, live with their mother in Leeds, while their father remains a significant part of their lives. Leanne also enjoys spending time with her grandparents. She walks them to church every Sunday morning. Leanne also loves chocolate so much that an uncle has nicknamed her Chocolate Chip Niece. Leanne, a cheerful teenage student at West Leeds High School, is working hard toward her GCSEs. After studying diligently for her exams, Leanne decides to have a day out with her 15-year-old best friend, Sarah Whitehouse. Sunday, November 26, 2000, starts out bright and sunny. After church with her grandmother, she returned home and prepared to go shopping with Sarah. Leanne wore a black and white striped sweater, black trousers, and high black boots. She also wore a blue jacket. Her hair was tied in a French twist, which her mother loved, and she set off to meet Sarah. The two took the bus to Leeds City Centre. After shopping, they took the bus back home to Bramley. At around 4:50 p.m., they got off the bus and walked a short distance to Sarah's house before parting ways. Sarah saw Leanne walking towards Howley Gill. It was a deserted, unlit path in the woods, a shortcut that Leanne's mother had forbidden her to take at night. However, since it was still light, Leanne felt safe on this public path. It was only a 20-minute walk home. When Sarah called Leanne's house at 5:20 p.m. to talk, she was surprised to find that Leanne had not yet returned home. Sharon immediately called Leanne's cell phone to look for her, but there was no response. Sharon continued to call several times, but the phone only rang a few times before going dead. Finally, at 7 p.m. that evening, Sharon called the local police station to report her daughter missing. That same night, the family went to the local church to get flashlights to search the area. In the early morning, Leanne's was looked for, but there was no answer and no sign of her. West Yorkshire Police, led by Inspector Chris Gregg, launched an intensive search for her. It was a daunting task, with the area home to more than 700 houses, vacant lots, woodlands, canals, drains, and wells, many potential hiding places for the teenager. Despite the difficulties, the police were determined to find a way to bring Leanne home safely. Helicopters patrolled overhead while uniformed officers and sniffer dogs searched every nook and cranny of the streets. Litter collection was temporarily suspended to ensure that no evidence was lost. However, after a week, there was still no trace of Leanne. Investigators retraced Leanne's last steps. They were assisted by Leanne's 19-year-old sister, Michelle, and her best friend, Sarah. Michelle wore the clothes Leanne had been wearing and followed the route her sister had taken when she missing. "We tried our best, but we hoped that she had run away and that nothing bad had happened," Michelle later said. When the story was broadcast on TV, several witnesses contacted investigators to say they had seen a man walking a black and tan dog in the Howley Gill area just an hour before Leanne got off the bus to go home. Investigators sketched out a general description of the man, about 5 feet 1 inch tall, with a stocky build and a round face that may have been scarred. He was seen wearing a 3/4 length waterproof jacket and dirty jeans, along with a black beanie. Police quickly alerted the public and received numerous calls. All of the dog owners became suspects. Ultimately, 70 dog owners were identified, but all were ruled out as suspects. The case has gone cold as there is little new information to go on. However, the public continues to support Leanne Tiernan's family and is doing everything it can to keep her story in the spotlight. Sean Clark, a father of 3 from Leeds, heard about the case and offered a £10,000 reward for information leading to Leanne being found safe. Iceland Foods, a supermarket chain, has printed Leanne's picture and details on milk cartons sold in stores across the country. Flyers and signs featuring Leanne in her uniform and the words, "Have you seen me?" have appeared in towns and cities. The police have received some information and have been able to confirm sightings of Leanne in areas as far afield as Doncaster and Blackpool, but all the information and reports of sightings have not brought them any closer to finding her. Leanne's parents have been in the media, making desperate appeals for the public to help find their daughter. It has been a very dark Christmas for Leanne's family and loved ones. Leanne's father left Christmas presents under the tree for his missing daughter, and AW's Life CD that Michelle had bought for Leanne has remained unopened. Months have passed since they began searching for her. They have sometimes felt depressed, fearing that she had been kidnapped and would never return. But Michelle said, "We couldn't believe it. Every day, when we didn't hear from her, we would ask ourselves, is she coming home today?" In the end, more than 2,000 homes, sheds, and outbuildings along the route they believe Leanne took on her way home from the shopping trip were searched. A detective explained, "We had to establish the route she might have taken. We called it the Red Route." Police took DNA samples from more than 140 men in the area and carried out searches at various locations across Leeds. However, they found no trace of the young woman. Her family and friends remained hopeful that she would return safely. On August 20th, 2001, 9 months after Leanne went missing, police found a body in Woodland in North Yorkshire. This ended any hope that Leanne alive. Police called the family to inform them of the discovery. On the day Leanne's classmates returned to school to collect their GCSE results, Mark Bisson was walking his 2 dogs in Lindley Woods, a densely wooded area just inside the North Yorkshire county border. He came across what looked like a pile of rubbish, but it turned out to be a floral quilt. He loosened the string holding the quilt together and found what looked like a body wrapped in bin bags. Police arrived at the scene and completely removed the blanket and 9 thick green garbage bags, revealing a clothed body. The victim's hands were tied behind her back with 3 yellow cable ties, and a leather dog collar was tightly secured around her neck. Investigators pulled the black garbage bag off her head to reveal the decomposing face of a young woman. At the time of her discovery, authorities were unable to determine the exact cause of death, but there was a suggestion that strangulation may have been the cause. This was not the first time a body had been found at the site. In 1992, the body of Yvonne Fitt was discovered in the same area, and the killer was never caught. Detectives hope this case will not end in the same way. Fingerprints identified the body as that of Leanne Tiernan. An autopsy revealed that she had been strangled with a plastic cable, resulting in her death. The disappearance has been classified as a murder. Authorities believe that the perpetrator is a local people. First, Leanne's body was found 16 miles from where she was last seen. Additionally, the yellow cable used to bind her hands came from the British postal system, specifically used by Royal Mail or Parcel Force. Finally, the green bin bags in which Leanne was wrapped came from Morrison's, a large grocery chain with 2 stores in the area. DNA samples were collected from people involved, such as family members, friends, and known sex offenders in the area, in an attempt to match DNA. 17th birthday, she was buried at Sanford Methodist Church in Bramley, Leeds. The church where Leanne was baptized was filled with hundreds of people paying their respects. Many spilled out onto the streets to honor her memory and share stories of Leanne's life and optimism. All attendees were dressed in brightly colored clothing. Leanne's mother, sister, and close friends, along with others, carried a white coffin into the church. A wreath bearing the words, "Night Night Baby," and the Guns N' Roses song, "November Rain," were featured at the service. The congregation sang her favorite hymns, including "Give Me Oil in My Lamp" and "Ye Shall Go Out with Joy." Inspector Chris Craig was among those who attended Leanne's funeral. When he saw Leanne's coffin being brought to Hilltop Cemetery, where she was laid to rest, his determination to find her killers and bring them to justice grew stronger than ever. After conducting tests on a sample of the victim's heart tissue, the medical examiner concluded that the victim had been murdered on the day of her abduction and that the body had been refrigerated for months. Several weeks before the victim was found, the killer attempted to dispose of the body by dumping it in a public dumpster, covered with a blanket. The killer likely hoped the body would end up in a landfill, but that did not work. Worse still, the killer hid the body so well that it made it extremely difficult to collect forensic and DNA evidence. Law enforcement hoped to make a quick breakthrough in identifying the killer. However, that hope was dashed when the results showed that no DNA from the killer was found on Leanne. They decided to investigate the items found with her. Investigators discovered dog hair on Leanne's clothing, leading them to believe they could profile the pet's DNA and from there, identify the killer. The hairs were sent to a university in Texas, which had developed a technique for profiling pet DNA. However, the university was only able to identify a partial DNA profile of the dog. This was the first time a dog's DNA profile had been collected in a case in the UK, but there was no dog to compare it to, so the results were not used. The scarf found around Leanne's neck, which contained her hair, was a vital clue. Investigators tested the hairs for DNA and created a DNA profile. They then focused on the dog collar that had been used to wrap the bin liner around the victim's neck. The collar was manufactured by Armitage Leather Products in Nottingham. If the killer had purchased the collar from this company, investigators hoped to establish the name or address of the suspect. The company had reported that it had sold its products to 220 different wholesalers across the UK and had provided sales receipts to the police. Investigators began contacting each company to see if they had any records of sales to the Leeds area of West Yorkshire. They gained a lot of useful information from this investigation. Pet Pajamas, a mail order. Her company, based in Liverpool, had sold 3 leather collars and leashes from Armitage. Information about these 3 customers was passed on to investigators and began looking into their backgrounds. One of these customers quickly became a suspect. His name was John Taylor, and he lived in Bramley, just about 3/4 of a mile from where Leanne missing. This suspect had been mentioned earlier in the investigation. When Leanne's body was discovered, witnesses claimed that he had been in the woods with his dog. However, when questioned, he claimed that his dog had died before Leanne was murdered. Did John kill his pet to destroy evidence? Investigators wanted to know more about John. When asked how often he had been to the area where Leanne had missing, he claimed it was not a place he had ever visited and stated that he certainly did not go there with a dog. On the outside, John appeared to be a normal man. He was a 45-year-old parcel delivery driver working for Parcel Force, a division of the Royal Mail. His only previous conviction was for stealing a suit of clothes when he was 15. John was married and had 2 children, a son born in 1981 and a daughter born in 1983. The couple divorced in 1996. John lived alone in a terraced house on Cockshot Road in Bramley, Leeds. However, there were concerns that he enjoyed torturing the animals he hunted. His neighbors thought he was a normal person, but they had witnessed him catching, torturing rabbits, as well as stabbing a fox several times during his poaching trips. He also seemed to enjoy killing pheasants. After moving to his new home on Cockshot Road in 1982, John began keeping and breeding dogs and ferrets. His wife at the time, Janet, was usually proud of their home, but the stench from the animal feces gradually affected their marriage. She tolerated the situation until one day when he brought home 2 large owls to raise in the house. The owls lived on a diet of newly hatched chicks, which he had bought by the thousands and stored in a large freezer on the property. Janet eventually decided to file for divorce. After that, John traveled across the country, but not for work. Instead, he sought women and often engaged in sexual encounters. He also used Lonely Hearts ads. Through John's phone records, investigators began to track down women to interview. Most described him as harmless, but some admitted that they had called the police to report him as a suspect after Leanne's body was discovered and revealed details about her murder. 2 women painted a picture of a man with violent tendencies. One woman mentioned that he had asked to have sex with her daughter. An ex-girlfriend broke up with John due to his interest in bondage. He would tie her hands with rope and cover her face with a scarf. When the investigator asked her to describe how John bound her, she said he used a bundle of ropes that he kept in a drawer next to her bed. Specifically, he placed a plastic rope around each of her wrists and then used a 3rd rope to tie both of her hands behind her back. This method was similar to how Leanne was found, and this information has never been made public. Police arrested and questioned John. They took a DNA sample from him and searched his home and personal property. Police quickly cordoned off John's home on Cockshot Road, erected a 7-foot wall, and conducted a thorough search of the property. In the backyard, they found a hedge, a plum tree, and a poplar. Pollen patterns consistent with these plants were found on Leanne's hair, skin, and nasal passages, indicating that she had been there before she was murdered. When they dug up the garden, they discovered the remains of several animals, including 28 ferrets in a mass grave and the skeletons of 4 dogs. One of the dogs, which was brown and black, appeared to have suffered head trauma. It is possible that John killed the dog to cover up his involvement. When police learned that a man with a dog was being soaked, hairs from the terrier were tested and matched those found on Leanne's body. Inside the house, the carpet had been removed. However, upon closer inspection, investigators found some pink carpet fibers caught in nails on the floor. These fibers matched exactly those found on Leanne's body. They also discovered Leanne's blood on the floor. The green bin bag that was tied around Leanne's body was manufactured in Devon. The manufacturer informed investigators that they had only produced a small quantity of this type of rope, which was used to make rabbit nets. The rope found at John's home matched the rope used on Leanne's body. In addition, a large quantity of distinctive yellow zip ties, manufactured by an Italian company for the Royal Mail, were found in his home. John, an employee of Parcel Force, a division of the Royal Mail, could have easily obtained these zip ties. Police also found a similar type of bin bag wrapped around a nail in John's kitchen. Furthermore, there were 3 RGE freezers on John's property. At first, John denied any involvement in knowing Leanne or having anything to do with her. However, when investigators presented all the evidence they had gathered, John eventually admitted that he had kidnapped Leanne but insisted that her death was an accident. According to John's testimony, after taking Leanne home, there was a struggle and Leanne fell, hitting her head and dying on the spot. However, no evidence supported the claim that Leanne fell. Additionally, John could not explain why Leanne was strangled or why her hands were tied with cables. Investigators have gained a better understanding of what happened to Leanne that night. Leanne was walking alone through the dark, unlit streets of Holly Gill when John attacked her from behind. Although there were no direct witnesses, it was reported that someone heard a muffled scream. John covered her mouth and eyes with a scarf, wrapped her in a coat, and took her to his home, which took 22 minutes. There, he tied her hands behind her back and made her sit on a bench in the old kitchen. He strangled her with a cord and a scarf, then kept her body in the kitchen freezer for months. Before Leanne's body was discovered, his friends reported that a freezer in his kitchen was missing. Investigators believe that the freezer may have been damaged, prompting John to dispose of Leanne's body, a decision that ultimately led to his arrest. On February 15, 2002, John Taylor, 46, was convicted of Leanne's murder and kidnapping. He was sentenced to 2 life terms and must serve 20 years before he can be considered for parole. Investigators believe this was not John's first crime. The way he hid and disposed of the body was carefully planned, suggesting he had committed offenses before. John Taylor was sentenced to life in prison for assaulting and attacking a barmaid. He is currently serving his sentence